Today's Lunch and Learn is going to be about woodworking. I am Tony Scherba. I am the CEO and resident woodworker here at Yeti. So I really like woodworking. It's like, I feel like it's really awesome because you are bringing something to life. So already you're seeing that I did this pretty quickly because I didn't stage my photos and bring them up and, and organize them properly. But on the right, you can see just like a big old stack of wood in my car. That is a bunch of old floorboards from a Van Heusen factory that I picked up in Petaluma at a place called Heritage Salvage. And on the left and what's supposed to be underneath is our office, really cool with cool illumination and this mountain range that I built out of that, that pile of wood right there. So it feels cool. I feel very accomplished doing it. I like it because it's a bit different from, the work that we do putting things together on a screen. It's very tangible. There's a nice start and stop to it, which is a bit different than what we usually do. But there's a lot of similarities too. So we'll kind of talk about that today as well. As last night I was I was checking this out, and I guess the length of your beard is dictates where you might be on the woodworking spectrum. And so I'm pretty much I do have DIY wood boards on Pinterest, but I can't quite wave a magic wand. Maybe Lance could. I don't know, but there's something about beards and woodworking, I guess. I don't know. So I'm going to kind of just go through some steps that I usually go through when I'm starting a woodworking project. And I'm going to kind of talk about a couple of the specific projects that you might see around the office and whatnot as well. So the first thing I do is get Pinspired, and gotta thank America for turning me on to Pinterest here. Obviously, I knew about it, but America was just stop talking to me about all the stuff you want for the new office and just start putting together a Pinterest board. So I started doing that. Found a bunch of inspiration, things I liked. Pinterest does a really great job of being you liked this thing, now you might like this thing, So I put together a bunch of these boards. I have one for some of the projects I've done is I have my bed frame. I have different tables as different Pinterest boards. So this was just some of the stuff that I wanted as far as art around the office. And you can kind of see where some of the inspiration came from, with the different for that mountain range that we have, from some of these different things. So as you've probably seen these, but these are great. The Pinterest versus reality stuff. So it's there's just, if you search this, there's all kinds of really funny stuff. And the whole purpose is to kind of, avoid, having your Cookie Monsters turn into that, because you might scare some children or something. But yeah, so I don't know, I've kind of developed a process now that allows me to not end up trying to copy something too specifically to Pinterest, where I can kind of be inspired by Pinterest, but not be making trying to copy something exactly and making some weird stuff. I just thought these are really funny, so I included a couple other ones in here. This pancake one I thought was pretty great. Looks gross. So I'll start and I'll create a big board of all the stuff I like. And then as the project comes together, different pieces of it will, kind of fall off of that board and will become you know, more parts of it will become a reality, and you'll end up kind of mimicking some more specific things. But I don't set out with the intention of like copying like one specific thing. It's more like, okay, this is, you know, now this is what's feasible with the materials I have and, you know, what I've been able to do. And so I went back through some of my Pinterest boards and found things that more closely, like, you know, ended up becoming kind of like, you know, the things that I created ended up becoming more closely aligned with like some of these things. So like, you know, you can see this like reclaimed wood, you know, mountain range here. Like it looks, the thing that I made looks fairly like very similar to this. I've made like my bed frame. I ended up doing joinery that looked like pretty similar to this. I built a lamp in my house, and it kind of is, you know, roughly like inspired by that, but it ended up being pretty close. But these all started out with like probably 100 different pins. And then, you know, as I found the different materials and stuff, we do it. And I work with reclaimed wood a lot. So it's like, you don't know exactly what you're going to get when you go to a lumberyard. So usually like I'll have a fairly like rough idea of something that I want to build. And then, you know, as I start sourcing materials and things, I'll figure that out. So this was kind of like, I knew I wanted to create something that I could like put my like gear on, for lack of a better term, in my apartment, because I didn't have like a lot of storage. So, and I wanted to have something that stuck out so my like bike frame could fit into it. And so I was like, well, if I design this like A-frame shaped thing, I could have like a shelf, and it could do it, and it could be pretty minimal because I don't have to screw anything into the wall. And so I ended up being like, okay, if I just get 3 beams, I could do this. And then I kind of sketched that out, and I didn't even have like the angles or anything that I like wanted to do it with. When I just started sketching it out, it was literally just like kind of like a triangle, you know? You know, similar to like when we're starting out with a software project, right? Like we sketch out roughly where we want to go, but we're not going to build all of the architecture until we start getting in there and figuring out some of the details and the libraries we're going to use, etc. So again, like I work with reclaimed wood. So like going and buying the materials is actually like a really like fun part of the job, I find, because you kind of are rummaging through. I have a bunch of ideas from like, you know, Pinterest that I've generated. So I know kind of what I'm looking for, but not exactly. And you find these like really cool gems. You get to go to like really funky places like this that just have like all kinds of stuff all over the place. And you get to, you know, you dig through stuff and you find interesting things. And a lot of times they're dirty and disgusting. And you're like, you know, well, hey, if I can like scrape off the top of this, how will it look, you know? And so that stuff's really interesting. Over here on the right is, this is actually just all the materials for my bed frame. So I picked up these things. I was like, you know, I think I'll be able to make something cool with this. So, just some other like, you know, raw materials. So downstairs we have that table, that with like the root legs, that's like in front of the mountain range thing. This was the root that like it started with. It was just like this like kind of root structure that I picked up at a lumberyard. The guy milled it, so he like helped me like just cut like chunks off of it, and it was like, okay, cool, this is going to be a table leg, you know. All of this stuff was a bunch of pallets that I picked up from the like city lights over here. Did you help me carry one? Yeah. So, you know, we had some fun. And then I literally went across the street to Don Ramon's. I took a couple tequila shots and had a crowbar and just like ripped apart pallets one night. Listened to like, you know, like classical rock music. But so then you got your raw materials for, you know, making signage, you know, in the office. So that was you know, fun. There's, when you're building, like one of the things that I didn't realize when I first started, was the difference between hardwoods and softwoods. And I don't know if we talked about this when we did that like woodworking class, but basically like I was buying a bunch of softwoods, and so I learned how to do woodworking with softwoods. But there's a major difference. So softwoods are basically like evergreen trees. So evergreen trees will grow fairly quickly, and like they have a ring structure. Like so up on the upper right is a is a softwood. You can see that they have like more coloring, which generally like makes them look really cool. But they also have like a wider ring structure, which makes them they're less dense. So they're softer. It's easier to work with. Hardwoods are deciduous trees, so they lose their leaves, and the rings are much more dense. It's really like so like there's that big slab downstairs, that big sequoia slab that I worked on. If you see that, there's a bunch of dings and dents and stuff in it. That's because it's a softwood. If it was a hardwood, it would have a lot less. It would have a lot, and it would dent a lot less. I just was redundant, but but they also were like way more expensive and way more difficult to work with. When you're sanding down softwood, you can sand down a softwood and like really bring out these like vibrant like colors and like vibrant shapes, but it's just gonna wear down more frequently. So when I built, like, I'm going to show you all like pictures of when I built the bed. My bed was the first thing I built with hardwood, and like there was a lot of lessons I learned doing that, but I had to do it because it has to support like a mattress and like human bodies and stuff. So here's a couple of my favorite places that I like going. They're Heritage Salvage in Petaluma. There's a guy that the guy who introduced this to me like told me it's like Disneyland for reclaimed wood. It's this like huge yard. They just have like a ton of stuff there. It's super fun. They had a TV show on like some channel, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's like totally fun. That picture I showed you before is from Heritage Salvage, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. There's Urban Ore in Berkeley that has a bunch of stuff. Building Resources here in the Bayview has some good things. So it's just, I like going to these places and picking something up. If you want to get a like basically buy hardwoods, this place in Berkeley is pretty good too, but it's not reclaimed. It's like that's when you're actually buying stuff. On the right there's a milling machine. So whenever you're trying, like, those like cool slabs like this stuff here, when like a milling machine basically just like takes a log and just like cuts slices of it. And it's really cool to see these things run at this place, M4 Specialties in Guerneville. Like these guys are crawling all over the place with a milling machine, and it's like super dangerous. But I don't know, it's really interesting to just see like a piece of wood just like become kind of like paper. I don't know, it's cool. So some of these images don't match up exactly, but step 4 is like finalizing plans. You want to kind of know, after you get your wood, you want to be able to say, okay, this is generally how I'm going to put this together. You're still not going to have it definitively, but you want to get a little bit more detailed before you start making cuts. So these are the cornhole sets that we have in our office. I did a gratuitous Instagram photo where I laid everything out before I like did it. But yeah, it's pretty fun, like, turning that stuff into something like that. So, the next step is obviously like cutting. I have a lot of instances where I will like not finalize my plans quick enough, or I will finalize my plans too quickly. I will get excited about cutting, and then you like cut and you go, and you're like, shit. Now I need to redo this. And so there's a lot of the saying, measure twice, cut once. You really need to stick by that. And it helps to just even lay your stuff out, lay it out roughly before you cut. when I get to, so my bed frame, like, I'd recommend putting together like a rough assembly. My bed frame, I put this all together. I ended up like cutting the edges of this, off like 1.5 inches too short, because I didn't account for like the fact that like this thing was going to be sitting there, and I literally like measured my mattress, and then was like, okay, cool, that's how long I need to do it. Like, and so I'd bought this wood up at Heritage Salvage. Like, I'd cut these things to like be exact, to fit these exactly. And then I just like cut this too quickly. And I was just like, shit, like afterwards, we can edit out that maybe. But you end up saying that a lot when you're woodworking sometimes. Luckily, I mean, in that case, this is like, especially when you're working with reclaimed wood, it's super important to be able to get, to measure things, because you might not be able to get that same piece of wood again. So I had to drive up to Petaluma and go to Heritage Salvage, and like luckily, like in this thing that they'd salvaged, there were still like 2 beams that were like this, and were like generally the same structure. So I was able to get those and do it, but it would have been I would have had to start like 100% all over, like just by like, literally just one measurement, like, and a stupid cut, like, so it's super important. That's what's really great about software, is that you don't run into those type of issues, So yeah, putting things like roughly together is great. And then, as you start kind of putting it together, like, especially with reclaimed wood, there's, a wood can be slightly warped in one direction, or, it can be bowed out at a certain spot. And so having tools that you can refine the wood with is super important. And so there's a number of tools. Like, I have this planer that I use a lot, where it's like, I have a beam, and I need to, like, for some reason it's kind of bowed out at a certain angle and it won't fit into a joint. So I got to, like, scrape it. This thing has like basically a razor blade at the bottom that you just like, rip off chunks of wood with. And so doing, here, I can just pass this around. This is like an old school planer. There's a lot of like big machines that do planing now. But I don't know, it's fun to just do it the classic way. I also have like chisels on here. So like, there's just a lot of chiseling and stuff, like, especially with these, with like these joints, like I had to do a ton of chiseling in there to like make sure everything fit appropriately. And then there's like getting into some of the details. A lot of times, again, with like reclaimed wood, is you have this thing that might have, that might need a little bit of like repairing. So there's resins and putties and all kinds of stuff that you can put in there. But you want to make it, essentially you just want to make your wood kind of like, so that there's not like rot exposed and stuff like that. And so it's really, I have my mom, for my birthday, I asked her to buy me a butane torch, 1, because I thought it would be funny, and 2, because I actually needed it. But like, I have a butane torch, so I can I can burn out like any rot, and then can like cover it up, so that when you have a piece of furniture, you don't want to spend a bunch of time on it and then have it like rotting away, So there's a lot of detail work. That table downstairs, I bought that piece of wood because I was like, oh, it's really cool. It's got all these cool swirls in it and stuff, but it was like rotted like crazy. So there was a ton of work I had to do on it. And like, I'm not good at this stuff yet. There's still a lot of like, I mean, you can go to some of these places and you see these people doing these like beautiful, like laid down resins. But I'm not like, you can look at it and kind of see some not so great work that I did on that. So then it's just like, it's a process of really like refining. This is again, my bed frame. I was like, I had to make sure everything like fit together. Putting in these different, these different beams that went across it. and so like when I got here, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like pretty much done with this project. Right. I think this is one thing I've learned like again and again and again from woodworking is that like getting to that point, you're like halfway to 2/3 of the way done. You're not like even close to being done. Which I also feel translates like really similarly to like our software projects where, it's like, cool, we got everything working. And then it's like, oh wait, there's like, we've got to really like make it beautiful and we have to make it, work for our users. So when we say we're done, like there's really like so much more time to get added on to make it like something that we'd be proud of and make it great. So it's the same way with woodworking. I've rushed through projects and then you're just sort of like, damn, like I didn't finish this like appropriately. So then you get into the super fun part of sanding. Woodworking is pretty much sanding. Like it's like you just sit there and you sand and you sand and you sand. And so most projects that I work on, like it says that this is paint stripping, but like if you're working with like live edge stuff or anything like that, you're sanding, you're doing basically like one job sanding here, another job sanding at like 100, another one sanding at 150, another one, and then another one sanding at like 200, and then at 300 grit. So I don't know if, I think we all, like, you learned what grit was. It's basically how coarse the sandpaper is. And so there's just like, you need to sand so many different times. And I remember when I was first woodworking, I'd hit it with like a 60 grit and be like, okay, cool, I sanded it, I'm done. But then you're like, why does my project not look as nice as some of these other like projects that I see? And it's because they sanded it like 4 more times, with increasing amounts of grit. So I would like that was the one that as soon as I learned how to like sand properly, I was like, oh, I can make like really beautiful things, I have an orbital sander. There's like there's belt sanders too. The orbital sander is great. If you're sanding everything by hand, like good luck. Like you're just asking for, not finish your project. So then sanding, major fact. So as you can see, I just put steps, like, there's like several steps of sanding. Sawdust is like a huge thing with sanding. So do it in like a well-ventilated area, or invest in one of these like super expensive machines that like suck up sawdust. When we first moved in here, I used that room downstairs as like my like woodworking room. There's no ventilation in that room. So like I probably like destroyed my lungs like doing like working in that room because there was just sawdust all over the place. And I had a mask on and stuff, but like it's still like sawdust is a serious thing. But as you get there, as you get down to it, you can start revealing like this like real like beautiful piece of wood. So this is again, I did this quickly, so you can't really see all of it, but this is a coffee table I made. There's, it was a stump of wood I bought at this place in Berkeley. I spent probably damn near, I think I listened to the entire second book of Red Rising, like while sanding this thing. Like I spent like a ton of time just sanding this thing down. And there's so many different angles and stuff. I had to like figure out how to like get into certain crevices and things to sand it down. But like it's I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit therapeutic because you end up like it's this process of revealing, like revealing and polishing. And like once you get into it, you're like, well, I can't finish here because I need to bring out this like knot structure, and then to make it like look really cool, I've started like getting into like just hitting it lightly with a butane torch, which like adds some of the like like darker like marbling elements to it, which is pretty cool. Then, so this is actually like already, I wish I was taking pictures of this when it was not stained, but this is after it's been stained. So once you get like all the way down and like sand it to where you really want it, you can start sealing. So there's all kinds of different stains that you can put on things, and it will really dictate like how your piece ends up turning out. If you, and then it also depends on the type of wood. Specifically, like when I'm working with softwoods will absorb a lot more stain and be generally darker after you stain it than doing something that is doing something that's more of a hardwood. So depending on what you want to do, test it out on a piece of like scrap wood or something that's the same type of wood first. So here's one where I did, this is my dining room table, but this is right after it's was sanded, and it looks really cool. And then that's like after I put like stain on it, and so it's just like it just like looks like way more finished, you know. And this is where it starts getting like really exciting, and I take more pictures of the stuff I worked on. And so then have a beer, like, you know, you're done. I mean, it has to sit out there in the sun and bake for a little while to, you know, get all the stain done. But it's like, you know, once you're done, you know, sit back, have a beer. So this is one of the easiest things, and you've probably seen a lot of the stuff I've done around here, is like you just spend a ton of time on the surface, and then you can buy like metal legs and just stick them on there. And it's like, oh wow, it's really cool. So that's I got to that level, and then I was like, oh, I need to start making like legs and stuff. So this is my, like, you've probably seen those things in the background, but this is like where I like work when I'm working from home. You know, it's a cool little area that I created. I feel really rewarded working there. Realize this is probably like a good spot to just like end it, but I just want to show you like really quickly my bed frame because I'm super proud of it. Yeah, there's G when he was young. But so this was like a big joinery project I did. These are just like when I like all the components, and then like I took pictures at each stage when I was like putting it together. What I really like, I'm really proud of this because it doesn't have like the whole bed doesn't have a single screw in it. It's all just like puts it all like origami. It kind of comes together. So just like all of these different stages, it comes together. You know, then the things slot in the back. I created these like ties that stick in and like hold everything together. Roll out kind of the top that puts it on. There's no supports anywhere. There's only the four things. Again, this is why like I had to use hardwoods. If this was a piece of pine here, like it like I'd be falling in. So yeah, and then the headboard. The headboard is eucalyptus, and it's a sandwiched piece of eucalyptus, so it was like this, and it goes over. And so I wish I'd made my bed a little bit better before I took that picture. But and then I left this little slide in from the last talk I gave. But yeah, and then this is from our sanded deck. I just put it in there. So yeah, thanks.